A group of MPs say the government's counter-extremism strategy, Prevent, should be renamed Engage to help shed its toxic association among British Muslims. In a wide-ranging report on extremism, the Home Affairs Committee says Prevent should engage with all sections of the Muslim community. That phrase, though, Muslim community, Muslim communities, not just groups which already agree with the government. Kalsoon Bashir is director of the counter-extremism organisation Inspire, former lead Prevent officer for Avon and Somerset Police. She gave evidence to the committee. Kalsoon, good morning.
Good morning.
And Ali Milani is president of the Brunel University Students' Union, member of the National Executive Council of the National Union of Students. Ali Milani, hello.
Hello.
Kalsoon, a lot of people within Prevent and on the fringes of Prevent, and those people who are sympathetic to its ends, say that it's kind of well-intentioned but flawed. Would you say that was accurate? And give us an idea of what it is and why there are such objections to it.
Well, I think at the core, Prevent is a strategy which aims to protect British citizens from being drawn into terrorism. Like any strategy, there are things that could be improved, and that's what the report makes recommendations. But at the very essence, and what our work is about, is addressing those vulnerabilities that make individuals from this country attracted to terrorist ideologies and to keep them from going down that criminal path.
So why are there such objections to it from many people within Muslim communities? I mean, you can see on social media there's a kind of hysteria about it, a hatred for it, Ali Milani.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I would fundamentally disagree that the Prevent strategy at its core is aiming to protect British citizens. What it's doing is it's marginalising the Muslim communities. It's instilling an atmosphere of suspicion on an entire community and homogenising a community as all guilty before proven innocent. So I think that the report quite rightly says that the Muslim community feels under siege. However, its aim to change the PR and to change the name is not what the problem is. You know, we don't have a problem with the name Prevent. We have a problem with its practical applications.
What is the practical application with which you have a problem?
So specifically within education, we're seeing, young Muslim students who are being interrogated for reading the wrong books. We're getting presidents like myself who are being told to hand over the names of members of the Islamic Society to the police. These practical applications aren't coming from people from fringe society.
You know, there are a problem with radical groups in universities, though. I mean, for Cage, for example, and also Impact cannot speak at universities anymore. I mean, there are very real problems. How do you address those problems?
Well, I wouldn't put Impact and Cage under the same umbrella, but
many would. So how do you address those problems?
How we address those problems is by speaking to the unions, speaking to the student unions, the National Union of Teachers, the UCU, all of whom have condemned Prevent as counterproductive and as marginalising and attacking a singular community. What I would do is not rename Prevent. I would scrap Prevent altogether and start speaking to the trade unions, speak to the students' unions, speak to the Muslim communities who are at the forefront of this battle, and put something together that aims to draw your hand out and not push an originally economic and socially marginalised community further into the fringes.
Okay, just to clarify, Cage of the group who said that Mohammed Emwazi, the so-called jihadi John, was a lovely young man, and Impact, their former leader, said that Mossad stole his shoes. So what's the way ahead, Kalsoon?
I think, I've delivered training right across the country to thousands of teachers in schools, worked with parents who are concerned about the potential radicalisation of young people. I'm also a Muslim chaplain at a UK university, and I've been a chaplain long before I think Ali's been a student or president, and I've worked very, very successfully with students in the Islamic Society, challenging the myths and misconceptions. And it is terms like surveillance and hysteria and suspicion that groups condemning Prevent use to whip up that hysteria without actually, putting strategies on the table to address the issue of radicalisation. Whether we like it or not, it is an issue, and it is a security issue for this country. So we need constructive suggestions, and rather than Prevent becoming a political football between all these groups, I want to see real strategies put on the table to address the issue of radicalisation radicalisation. We're doing that, and I think we're doing it very, very successfully. And I think a lot of the criticisms that are made of Prevent, when they're actually taken on board, a lot of them are actually myths, lies made up to whip up hysteria against the strategy.
We'll come to that in a minute. We'll come to that in a second. But Ali, if you say, as you did, we're communities persecuted, we're communities oppressed by Prevent, that adds fuel to the very fire which causes extremism and is part of the whole narrative of us and them.
Right, but that's something that's being whipped up and is being propagated by the government strategy.
Are you persecuted?
I think when you have people like Muhammad Omar Farouk who are being driven out of education because he was a Muslim that happened to be reading a book that was on his reading list, when you have young people within further education that are being questioned for wearing Free Palestine badges because they happen to be Muslim, of course students are concerned. It's not like this is what we're trying to say is that this concept that there's a group of people out there who are whipping up conspiracy theories and lies and myths about Prevent. It's not what's happening. We've got the National Union of Teachers, the UCU, the NUS, all of whom have come out and condemned Prevent as counterproductive and as marginalising a community. It's not a political football. It's something that students at my university, students at many institutions are seriously concerned about, because there are Muslims who now feel like they can't read the same books as other students, who they can't have the same intellectual freedoms as others, simply because they're either brown or have a beard. This isn't. I think it's unforgivable that we're dismissing these very, very real concerns and fears as political football. That's shameful.
What are the lies to which you refer, and which make up this hysteria? What exactly do you mean?
I think, the story of perhaps, terror tots, Cage were spreading the myth that the government wants to take children away from parents, that 3-year-olds are being referred to as potential terrorists, when the very real reality is that if a 3-year-old is at risk from being taken away to Syria or has been exposed to very, very damaging online material, that is a safeguarding issue. And a lot of the examples that are used to create the hysteria around Prevent, when they're examined and you separate the fact from fiction, many, many times it's not actually a Prevent issue, but it's actually a safeguarding issue. And when the NUT say that they're not going to engage with Prevent, that they will instruct their teachers to follow their own safeguarding referral pathways, well, actually, that is all Prevent asks them to do in the first place. There is no guidance to pick up the phone to phone the police. All the guidance says is, if you're concerned, have a professional conversation. If you're concerned about an individual's vulnerability, talk to somebody, ask the questions, and then if you feel that you need extra support and guidance, that is there if you should need it.
Ali, how do you stop the young men and women being radicalised online, getting into this bubble, believing this narrative, believing this black and white, it's us against them? Prevent is all about persecution. It's all about the government persecuting us. Let's have a look online. Oh, yes, I like that. I want to go to Syria. How do you stop that happening?
Well, first of all, I think you're right. This us versus them and this divide and rule kind of politics isn't the right way to go. I think, again, it would be extremely helpful if there was a fluid conversation between the Muslim communities and the government on this issue. And
which group represents Muslim communities, though? Because this is another problem, because Islam is bottom up. It's one of its strengths, but it's also one of the weaknesses. If you come to saying, from an alien coming down and said, "Take me to your leader," and you've got a choice. Well, choice of about 500.
What you've got to do is you've got to recognise the atmosphere and the culture of Islamophobia wider than Prevent that exists in Britain right now, and organisations like Inspire and Quilliam are always going to further the work of the government. But what you have to do is
it's us and them. You're by just saying that. You are responsible for the us and them narrative.
I'm not responsible for the us and them narrative.
There you are.
It's Theresa May and the government.
We just said it. You just said moderate Islam groups. They're responsible for, they're helping the government. They're part of it.
When they're propagating a strategy that is causing 3-year-olds because they misspelt terraced house into being their parents being questioned by...
That's a myth. That's far more complicated.
That is a myth.
What you're doing there is you're using sort of simplified tabloid headlines about something, and if somebody used that towards a Muslim community, you would be quite rightly outraged about it.
It's not
that case was not about that. Kalsoon, Kalsoon, can you explain that?
The terrorist house, the young man, it's reported, misspelt terrorist and wrote terrorist, and his door was broken down by counter-terrorism officers. Actually, what he wrote was, "I don't like it when my uncle beats me." There was a visit to his house, but it had nothing to do with counter-terrorism, and no counter-terrorism police officers were involved. But the story still propagated is that counter-terrorism police officers knocked the door down, took laptops. That is just not possible.
Look, it's not about a singular case, right?
You just said it was.
No. Well, I used it as an example, right?
So not a very good example.
Okay, well, there's a million and one examples that we could use. I've used the issue that happened at Salford. I can use what happened at Bradford with the names of societies going over. If we don't recognise that this isn't one or two students, these are three major unions that have problems, and this is a community, as the report says, that feels under siege and isn't connected to the Prevent strategy because they feel further marginalised. This isn't 2, 3, 4, 5, 50 students who are conspiring against the government strategy. This is an entire community. This is three major unions that have a real problem with the government strategy, and something needs to be done.
There are deep concerns about the Prevent strategy. That's clear. Thank you, Ali Milani. Thank you, Kalsoon Bashir.